So I'm going to start with introductions. Many people know me as Mallacore or RJB, depending on where on the web you sort of encountered my artwork. And basically been doing 3D modeling off and on for well over 10 years now. And basically one of my big interests is Stargate, so a lot of my art tends to revolve around that. And the current project is a fan design based in the Stargate universe, and the ship is called the Abydos. It's designed basically to fall into a smaller role than the Daedalus. So basically Earth is left at this point where, yeah, we have powerful starships, but we also have very limited numbers, and to compensate for that, sort of in my post-universe imagination, is the construction of smaller ships that will sort of fill that gap quickly. And this would be the Abydos, and this is the core sort of build of the ship. And the thing that makes this one unique is its modular design. So you have the core ship here. The concept is sort of in here where different modules can attach onto the ship to change its sort of configuration depending on the mission that it's involved in. So you have the core ship here, and then outlined in red would be where one of the module setups would attach. So you'd have the ship's basic firepower and defensive capability. Torpedo pod with capital ship weapons, so it increased the ship's combat engagements. Planetary assault pod, which would allow it to carry additional troops, and so if you're assaulting a planet or a stronghold, you know, you can necessary guns designed to give orbital support to the troops. And I also have the idea for things like science pods and just miscellaneous things depending on, you know, non-military application. And since the last stream, this is sort of where we're at with the design. So you have the core ship, and then you can see the first module that I'm working on. So that's attached, and then it sort of shows it in its separated state, and obviously the different connectors. So we'll sort of hop in here. So on the core ship, you'd have basically the attaching segments. So there'd be sections where the modules would slide in and lock in. There'd be crew access, so that people can move from the main ship to the modules. And then you'd have the main power junction, so this would open and allow access to the main power junction. And the core ship can function by itself. It'd be like a light escort destroyer. The ship's equipped with its own shuttle bay, because even though you have beaming technology, doesn't mean every planet you can do that in. So sort of as a backup, it does carry a shuttle bay. So not big enough to carry fighters, but it would carry a singular landing ship. And then you'd have different crew accesses, you know, via umbilicals when the ship's docked at a starport. And then going into our module that we're working on. So this is the module itself. And you can see the corresponding attaching segments. So this is where it would attach onto the main ship, and you'd have your different crew accesses, power junctions. And this one is geared around basically adding extra fire support to the ship, so increasing its defensive capability while also increasing its offensive capability. Hello, how's it going? So basically a lot of point defensive guns that it'd be adding to the design, as well as another Asgard beam weapon. So this is sort of my mental idea of what the beam weapons would look like, at least for this ship. I'm not doing too bad today. It's a weekend, snowy outside, so it's nice to be inside next to the hot computer. And just sort of a context of it with the rest of the ship here. Obviously only one side's attached because it's not mirrored yet. And this is where we're sort of plunking away and playing. At this point the module's very close to getting finished. Just have some detail to fill into sort of these areas and finish off sort of doing a little bit of panel work here and filling in the area there. The bridge on this one, so the actual bridge would be tucked away lower. And then this would sort of be like more of an observation and sort of control tower sort of one for, so if there's fighters around it would sort of guide things in that aspect. But your actual bridge would be lower into the ship and a little bit more tucked away. And then on the ship itself, again, there's a multitude of things. It actually carries missile bays like the Daedalus would, and let's see what else is sort of playing around on here. Don't have the guns attached to the core ship in this version, but there's different defensive guns along the way. Again, sort of beam weapons that are attached to the ship. And the difference between on the Daedalus is these ones are sort of fixed mounted, so they're forward facing. Like they have a bit of a a sweeping capability as far as shooting. Thank you. And basically the idea is the ship's not necessarily the toughest ship in the fleet because of its size, so it's more hit and run attack, so it'd come in, hit very hard, pull away, come back around and hit again, or it'd be part of a battle group with a larger ship. So, sort of any other questions on the ship itself, or? I'll sort of bring up the last full rendering I did of it too. This one's not designed to land. Like I did a design as a commission project, the Endeavor, and that one actually did have landing legs so the ship could actually land on the ground, but this one's basically fully space worthy and not designed to actually land on the ground itself. Like it can hover, it can probably land in the water, but it's not designed to actually spend lots of time on the ground. And even construction of it, it would be built in orbital shipyards. So sort of in my future Stargate world, they'd have orbital shipyards over the moon, and basically that would be the main separation from Earth for defense. So you'd have the main, like a big space station between the Earth and Moon, that would be the main hub for traffic coming into the planet. And then the moon would be basically a large factory and storage facility, so on the moon surface itself would be like warehouses for materials and parts. And those would be beamed up to the orbital shipyards, and basically they'd use Asgard matter construction technology and basically build the ships that way. So that's sort of my version of the future of Stargate. So we'll see if that turns into any kind of reality if they make another series. Well, the Prometheus, when you see the sheets on scale and that, the Prometheus is very similar in size to the Daedalus. I think it's only a little smaller. And this ship is actually about probably half the size, if not a little smaller than the Daedalus. Like the idea is that they can be built quickly and in mass, and then with the different modules they can be specialized to their task. And the modules themselves are set up in a way that they can be quickly coupled and decoupled. So they basically just slide in, lock in, and are basically ready to go. Well, when you're like the way I look at it is, Earth has a fleet of very powerful ships, but it only has a handful of them. And to have something that can be multi-rolled and quickly deployed, especially for, you know, defense of the defense of the Earth. Like Earth has been attacked multiple times, be it by the Wraith, Gould. Everybody under the sun has had their turn attacking Earth, so a fleet of ships to actually defend it would be of our benefit, while still having the capability to continue to explore and expand our influence as we, go even beyond the gate network. How are the modules maneuvered in space? That's pretty much a good question. Like, I never designed them with little thrusters in mind, but they'd probably sit static, and then the ship themselves would probably pull into position and sort of slide in. Pair, and they'd be independent. But the other alternative would be the ship carries, some sort of worker drones that can be deployed, attached, and move things as needed, which probably isn't a bad idea for down the line for maintenance and that. Like if you're in a battle, your ship's damaged and you have to repair holes in space, having some small automated drones would be kind of a interesting way to fix the ship. Yeah, you could give them a puddle jumper nudge. Like ideally, like you'd be in a shipyard and they'd have the facilities to quickly attach them. And the other thing that I did like about the idea of the modules is, let's say you're actually in a battle and your module is damaged, so it's no longer effective. You can actually jettison the module, lighten your ship, and thus, increase your maneuverability in, bad situations without carrying the dead weight. And I think it's a concept in sci-fi that doesn't really get, touched on very often. You're in space, you have ships that don't have to necessarily be aerodynamic or symmetrical, and, there's nothing stopping you from, having ship designs that can be reconfigured and altered depending on what they need to do. Okay, let's sort of have a look-see here, and like I know the area I want to sort of maybe focus on today is filling in sort of these zones. Like I want them to be very mechanical in nature. Like I like to add very mechanical, functional parts to a ship. I think it sort of gives them a connection to realism that people can sort of enjoy, and it sort of just creates that connection to the real world. I think I want to make sure when I do texture that, I'm going to keep it as sort of a darker area. I don't think I've been to there on YouTube. Like I might have been there and not really paid attention to the channel name. What do they sort of have there content-wise? Okay, I'll have to check it out. Like I do follow the Twitch channel for David, the guy that plays McKay. So I've really appreciated what he's been trying to do with his time away from acting. Okay, then I'll definitely have to sort of check it out. Like the one thing that I really appreciate with different actors is the ones that actually do sort of put that effort towards, being part of their community with their fans, and I think that sort of makes them stand a little above and beyond. And it's actually kind of, funny, ever since I started to watch his Twitch channel, I find that he sort of pops up all over the place on, TV and movies that I just never noticed him being in different shows before. Like I was watching the season finale for Private Eye, and he was one of the side characters in that one. And see, that's how I get nothing done. I'm going to spend all my time on YouTube watching videos of Stargate actors. Not that that's a bad thing. Hello, how's it going? And the other thing that I do want to sort of get input on, like obviously I'm working on the Abydos today, but when I do go back to the Mara, which is sort of my, I guess it'd be sort of like a military transport similar to like an Alcash, or even, well, it'd probably be bigger than the cargo ship, is I really am wanting to arm it, but I'm not sure which way to sort of go with it. Like, I have an idea where I want to put weapons. I just don't know if I should stick with like some sort of energy pulse weapon, or do like missiles or drones. Just not sure which way to go with that one. Like, I don't want to go overboard where it feels too powerful, but I want it to have something. I'm doing pretty good today. We ended up with quite a bit of snow over the weekend, so it's nice to be inside where it's warm, and obviously being next to the computer, it's sometimes very warm. Yeah, I had to go out yesterday for work. I run a construction company for my full-time job, and I was checking on a project and I had to drive out of town, and it wasn't bad on the trip out. We were just getting some blowing snow when I was getting into the other town, and on the way back it was basically, blizzard whiteout conditions, and you couldn't see 10 feet in front of you, so it was definitely a fun trip back into the city. Yeah, just trying to get a feeling on how this part's feeling. I've tried to do a few Trek designs. Like, I have one that I started a while ago that I do want to revisit. It's just, for me, it's hard to get the style that I want. Like, I'm so used to a certain style. Like, I'm very mechanical in my designs, and it doesn't always obviously transfer well with Trek designs, but doesn't mean that, like, I do want to do like a Cardassian Galler cruiser at some point. Like, that would be sort of more in my sort of design realm. I don't know if I have the one that I was working on. Unfortunately, when you build a lot of things, it's hard to keep track of where you put them. May have to look that up at another point. But yeah, I did try a Trek design at one point, and it's a little bit, I'd call it a little bit unconventional to the normal, Federation designs. It's sort of Dominion War era is what I was going for. Yeah, I don't know how the Sovereign would sort of look with a neck. It would definitely be different, that's for sure. Like, I almost wonder if you'd almost set the saucer a bit back and sort of, bring the neck sort of backwards towards the back of the ship and sort of build it that way. Sort of taking like almost like the Excelsior has, but sort of angling it back into the ship. That might actually not look too bad. But yeah, you definitely want to do something a little different with it, I would think. But, I don't think it's undoable as far as coming up with something that would work. The other thing I would like to try as far as modeling is I think it would be fun to do some sort of original designs based in that universe. You know, especially with things like belter ships, where I think you have a lot of flexibility in what you can sort of do with a design and get away with. Yeah, I just finished the current season of The Expanse, so I'm pretty much in the same boat as everybody else and waiting till the next season. And also sort of sad to hear that obviously this is going to be the last season. Like, they might have plans sort of down the line, but you know, as fans, you always like to, you know, see the ball keep rolling. And especially when the books, if I remember, are coming to an end fairly soon as well. Now, last I heard is they were saying that Season 6 was going to be the sort of final one, at least of this go-around. But that doesn't mean that they don't have plans for it in a different shape, way, or form. Maybe for the last 3 books they might do like a mini-series or a group of movies or something in between. Purgatory almost. You know, the worst for me was what was it, Dark Matter. You know, you're 3 seasons in, and you know you end up with a big plot development at the end of the 3rd season, and then you know the show gets canceled and doesn't get carried on in any shape, way, or form. And that is another sci-fi series that I would recommend for people. Like, even though it got canceled, it's, you know, very much well worth the watch of it. So any other personal favorite sci-fi series that ended up getting lost to the void that people enjoyed? At least with the Orville, if I remember, did they not record? What would it be? Refilm or start filming again? I guess it would be. So at least it's sort of in the process. But after this season, who knows where it's going to go? Oh, they stopped again. And wasn't there also something to do? I think there was something about Seth MacFarlane and his contract with them that was also changing too, or it's hard to keep track with all the changes. Oh yeah, Farscape is always well deserving of a rewatch, especially if you're a Stargate fan, because obviously a lot of actors and carried over from both shows, so. Actually, it would be kind of fun if they did some sort of, not necessarily, I guess you could call it a continuation, but it'd be fun to see some sort of spin-off or some sort of follow-up of the characters from Farscape, and even if it was like a mini-series to see where, the world has sort of gone with that franchise. It's also the same, like when you take series like Babylon 5, people are always talking about they should do a remake. I think the series itself was good the way it was, but I do think there is a lot of universe left to explore, and instead of a remake, I'd love to see, some sort of, spin-off. There's so much of a universe to explore with different characters, different settings, different races, and I think it's just always a shame that they leave those. It's actually one of the things I enjoy about The Mandalorian. You have Star Wars that has such a rich setting, and the movies are basically, for the most part, just beat the dead horse. But at least the TV series, like even Clone Wars, they sort of took the reins and decided to explore the what ifs and not get buried in the what was. And I think that sort of represents what fans want. They you know, we like what we're comfortable with, but we want to see more. We want that opportunity to explore, the shows that we love. We want to. That's why spin-offs of, TV series always seem to do so good. Why you have like so many NCISs and CSIs and shows like that. People just like to see that expanded universe around the settings that they like. Like, you still need some sort of connection. That's why there's usually, some sort of character that people are familiar with that they bring on, but I just feel that we don't see that as much in sci-fi. And I hope everybody so far is enjoying these live streams. Like, for me as an artist, I actually enjoy taking the time and chit-chatting with everybody as I sort of plunk away on what I'm working on. I think that's, such a unique element to the... And it's just nice to, have people give input and thoughts and, just the general sci-fi chit-chat of, things that we're all passionate about. I think for me, like, a lot of my designs sort of fit into a setting where, a lot of the conflicts have been resolved. We can sort of focus on building infrastructure. We can focus on, actually building a united Earth and actually start to explore. This is sort of like the golden age of humanity, but we're also trying to do it where, we know that space is full of dangers. We've done our battles. We fought, the bad guys, and who actually lurks around the next corner. So yeah, we want to expand. We want to expand our influence. We want to, carry on the legacy that we've been sort of given as a civilization. But we want to do it in a way that, we're not going to bring our own demise to ourselves. And I think that's one of the hardest things I find in my art is everybody always says, do battle scenes, and you look at where Stargate ended. Who do you really, battle? A lot of your big villains are, pretty much gone. The Gould are, pretty much decimated or in hiding, and it really limits. I feel like I can do battle scenes, but they just wouldn't have the believability because they just wouldn't have the proper opponent. And that's something I want to sort of, investigate, as I do more art is, actually maybe come up with a a future villain that we can actually, you know, be toe to toe, or, you know, actually make interesting stories behind. Oh, and to jump back onto the that ship, basically it was a commissioned design, so as sort of the guy did up sort of like, I think it was a spaceship engineer that he was using, and he came up with a design in that, and he had very much in his, you know, mind what he wanted as far as, you know, the ship. So, you know, I tried to point him in certain directions of what I like, but at the end of the day, if somebody's, you know, paying the bills, it's ultimately up to them with what they sort of want the ship to look like, and that sort of ended up being the final design. And, you know, he's happy, and, you know, he's happy, I'm happy, and, you know, I'm glad that he, you know, allowed me to be able to share the model with the community and show off the renders. So yeah, the dateless variation aliens were one of the races that I was thinking of sort of exploring. Like, we only ever saw one ship of theirs, but, you know, it'd be actually interesting to build some sort of actual backstory, you know, with them included. Yeah, I keep crossing my fingers on the whole, you know, fourth series for Stargate. Like, right now it's a lot of talk, and until, you know, they mention that they're starting to film, it's all just, you know, unfortunately words. But I just, you know, keep my fingers crossed. Do you mean the ones from the later season, when they were fighting the sort of that drone race, or did you mean the ones that were trying to board the ship, and I think they were trying to steal technology, if I remember correctly? Well, I think we all learn that with sci-fi is, unless, you know, somebody has the go-ahead, there's, you know, nothing to get too excited about. Okay, yeah, those aliens, I can't remember what they were called. But when I was watching it, I never really got the feeling that they were overly advanced technologically. Well, 5 chevrons locked is, you know, still a fair way away from the gate being active. And I guess it also depends on, you know, where you're dialing to, too. Yeah, that's the name. Well, like I say, I think we all agree that, you know, it's a lot of talk. Like, we're hopeful, but until something sort of signed in concrete, you know, it still feels, you know, light years away. Yeah, nothing's more scarier than aliens that have probes. That never ends well. Well, their name could have been mentioned in the comics, because they did do, if I remember correctly, they did have comics that sort of continued the story, and I don't know if it actually, resolved the universe or not. Like, I never ever got a chance to read any of the novels or comics, be it, for Atlantis or for universe. Like, I've heard that the one for Atlantis are. Okay, so that's where it sort of came into play. Like, I know I recognize the name, I know I've heard it, I just couldn't place, where I actually heard it from. Well, I guess sort of what do you want to know about the Phoenix itself? Like, when I designed it, this was years and years and years back, because basically I ended up taking some time away from 3D modeling. So the Phoenix was sort of started, I believe it was towards the end of Atlantis's TV run. So basically, Asgard technology was starting to become a very, big thing in the Stargate universe, and it was something that, as a fan of a show and as an artist, I wanted to sort of explore. And I sort of, saw what they did with the Daedalus, and then there was the talk of eventually, there being the Phoenix, and everybody at the time was hoping that we'd actually get to see, a new kind of starship. And unfortunately, it just ended up being another Daedalus class starship, and obviously was renamed in memory of the actor that played Hammond. As far as the circular section in the front, that was more, for me, it was like sort of a throwback to the Asgard Thor's original ship, the Bliskfinner, I believe was its name. And it had these rings that ran down the center neck of his ship, and that was an element that I always liked in the design, and it was something I wanted to sort of bring onto the Phoenix too. And so people always, asked if it was like a ring transporter, and that was never really the intent for it. It was just sort of a throwback to the Asgard lineage that it was, derived. And it's something that at some point I might go back and sort of revisit that sort of area of the ship and maybe fill it in a little bit more in that area, add a little bit more components, because I look at it and it feels a lot more bare than the rest of the ship. But the Phoenix was basically always my mental vision of the Daedalus 2.0. What happens if they took the the shipyard that the Daedalus were built in, and they sort of refitted them, used more Asgard technology, and actually built the ship closer to the capabilities that they were given. That was sort of always my envisionment for the Phoenix. Well, and that's some of the things that sort of disappointed me in the Universe series is we have this Asgard data core, and I always thought that they'd do sort of more with it, even if it wasn't in the public view. It always felt like this is it's a cool idea, but it's a too powerful idea, so let's sort of know what to do with it. Well, the Phoenix would be similar to the Daedalus, and like it would probably be able to land in like a dry dock that's built to support the ship, and it would be capable of landing in water also. It would carry very similar capabilities. Well, it'd basically be the next generation ship to the Daedalus. The Daedalus would be, whatever ones that are in construction would be finished, and then the Phoenix class would basically start to fill its, place. They'd have similar roles, or, the jack of all trade kind of ship. And the Phoenix is just basically the Daedalus. It just does the Daedalus's job better. Just better weapons, better maneuverability. Trying to debate whether I need something else sort of going on in here, or if that's sort of where I want it. Like, I want sort of a mechanical inset, and I think that sort of accomplishes that goal without going overboard. And that's always the other sort of challenge when you're modeling ships, is it's very easy when you're zoomed in and you're working on a part, and you can get lost in all the little details, and you end up with one section that's super detailed, and the rest of the ship ends up feeling empty compared to it. So to keep sort of a balanced flow across the entire ship, and especially if you're working on parts that may not necessarily be permanently attached makes it uniquely challenging. So obviously when this one's sort of done, I'm going to carry on and finish off the Mara, and then probably revisit one of its pods. But as far as future Stargate ships, is there something that people would actually like to see? Like I have plans for, like I'd like to do a dedicated science vessel at some point, and I'd also like to do something a little more civilian. Like it'd be interesting to do a Stargate universe freighter. And then I also sort of had the idea for as we're sort of exploring different solar systems that might be off the Stargate grid, having a fleet of basically automated, I guess you'd call them little drone ships that would travel out to the nearby solar systems around Earth. So something within let's say 50 light years around Earth. So you'd build like 100 of them, send them out, and they'd visit these star systems. They'd map them, see if there actually is life that lives off the grid, and then they'd relay back to Earth, and they'd be sent on like 2-year missions and then return to be refitted. They drop little satellites in those systems to sort of build up a safety sensor grid for around Earth, so that we could detect anybody that's building up fleets around us, or even detect hyperspace activities, and again, a lot of things to explore. Well, and that might be sort of the attachment to the whole exploration drones is, if they find planets that are usable for Earth, is a follow-up ship that would actually set up an expansion of the gate network, or even an independent network. Like I have a sort of this vision of a post, I guess it would be disclosure Earth, where you'd have sort of a collective world government where it might be independent nations, but they'd be working towards our hopefully our common good. And you'd have different divisions. You'd have the science and exploration division. You'd have a division based on colonization. Like I think it'd be really interesting to see Earth doing colonization, setting up outposts beyond the Earth, and not just little military bases. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, the gate bridge being rebuilt, but maybe with some sort of little more, I guess, better set up station to defend it. Well, and I do believe like disclosure is probably the main direction forward for the Stargate franchise. Like at this point you can't really hide things forever, and with things being disclosed, it gives you so many opportunities to do so many different things with the show that you couldn't normally do under the sort of secretive setup that they've had for the three other series. And I'd like to actually see what the Gate program, the impact it would have on society, how it would affect people, and just change the world, and would it cause conflict? Would people come together for the betterment of our civilization? Obviously with the pandemic and everything, we've learned that people don't always come together for the best things, and even during the worst times they don't. But I'd like to think that in an ideal future, and with us having goals that we can reach for, like exploration has always been a huge push for humanity. I'd like to hope that would bring people together and actually make them want to unite and try to make a better world. I think I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Like, it's not overly industrialized, but it's enough to sort of break up the ship a little bit and make it a little bit more visually appealing. I try to add little things here and there to sort of add a little bit of visual appeal, because it can get it's easy to get into repetitiveness. Let's see what we want to do with some of this. I don't think I need to get overly complicated with it. Basically just trying to fill in some of the bare areas and make them feel a little bit more paneled in. Sometimes being subtle is the key to the game. Make sure I didn't miss anything in there. Okay, let's see what we want to do with this part. So if they do a Series 4 for Stargate, what are some of the things people sort of want to see happen with it? And a disclosure, I want, to see more of a technological element to Stargate. Sort of curious what other people ends up continuing. I think that's sort of where I want to go with this section. Well, and I'd definitely like to see a variety of ships, and yeah, I'd actually like to see them, go beyond just military ships. Like, it'd be really interesting to see, what the show creators' vision of, personal individual ships would be. Like, what would a public, be a shuttle look like? What would, something for freight and that look like? It'd be, really interesting to see what they would do with those designs. I'd also like to see, like, how would that influence architecture on Earth? Like, I'd actually like to see what they would do with, futuristic sort of sci-fi buildings. And I'd like to see good old-fashioned exploration. Well, yeah, exactly. I'd like to see sort of the mechanical elements of, if you have a base in another galaxy, obviously I think it was the Apollo in Atlantis was doing supply runs. So it'd be interesting to see, like, non-military vessels doing those runs and what they would do, with a base there. Like, I believe in the comics or the books, Atlantis returned to Pegasus. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also, if I remember correct, didn't the Destiny also use a different form of hyperspace technology? Like, they always called it an FTL drive, they never called it a hyperdrive, if I remember. It'd be interesting to see them explore, different technology. Like, if the Destiny used an alternate form of, travel, it'd be interesting to see what they could do with that. In a way, it sort of reminds me of Mass Effect, because you obviously had the, what were they called? The big gateways, my brain's not thinking, but the ships themselves had warp drives, which were slow, but then they used the Mass Effect terminals to jump. Yeah, mass relays. Obviously, I haven't played the games in a while. It sort of popped up in my mind because they are sort of re-releasing a remastered edition, if I remember correctly. I just saw it on Steam not long ago that they were putting it up to, I believe, pre-order. But yeah, it would be interesting that they don't forget about, the Destiny and its own, unique, hyperdrive, and, again, another technology that would be, worth exploring. Yeah, it's always exciting when you sort of get near the end of a model and you can sort of, taste the completion. Sometimes they feel like long tunnels, and finally getting to see the light's always exciting because that means, I can sort of finish it up and then I get to play with it. You mean sort of this area here? Yeah, that's sort of my take on Asgard beam weapons. Like on the Daedalus, I believe they were turrets. And with the Abydos being a smaller ship, I wanted to do more of a fixed-based turret, so they still have a bit of range where the beam can sort of project at different angles. But I wanted this ship to be very aggressive oriented, like it's smaller ship. It's not the toughest ship, but it can come in very quick, hit hard, pull away, circle around, a lot of hit and run attacks. So I wanted to have a very aggressive sort of forward weapon profile. Yeah, I've done a little bit, like nothing that posted. I've done some stuff to do with Battlestar Galactica. I have a friend that I've been working on a model for him, and it's fairly close to being done. I sort of ended up on the last year end, so ended up sort of spending some time recovering and then sort of getting back my flow. But at some point, sort of before this year is out, I want to get back on that and get it done, and then hopefully once he's happy with the design, and he'll let me post a few public pictures that I can share. I also have another guy that I'm doing a commission project for, where he wanted to do sort of talking about weird different ships, as he wanted to do picture the X-Wing, but the X-Wing meets the 30 what would it be, the fighter from Stargate. So it's sort of like a weird mix between the two. So it's like if Stargate Earth got Star Wars technology, and what they'd sort of do if they tried to combine the two ships. Yes, the 302. I'm being a very bad Stargate fan today. Well, not quite Sunday for me. I'm still stuck on Saturday. Well, and the thing with the Aurora class is, if you look at the official drawings and the scales they put on that, they were really large ships, like surprisingly big ships. And so it only makes you wonder, like, if they built, as you say, a dreadnought, like how big would that actually be? Like, that'd be a terrifying ship to see. And that's sort of talking about ancient ship designs. That's actually something I want to, if time allows this year, is I do want to sort of revisit some of my old models that I have started. Because I have a few, I have what would be sort of the equivalent of a cruiser for the ancients that I started a long while back. And that would be sort of dataless size, so probably around the 700 to basically 1 kilometer sort of mark in size. So I wouldn't mind sort of finishing that at some point. And I also had a design for sort of like an outpost space station that I did a long while back for the ancients when the Stargate Atlantis was still on. And again, that would be another one I'd like to finish at some point. Well, and the thing with the ancients too is, obviously they were, they fled because of the plague, if I remember correctly. But they probably had a very vast civilization at one point, and they did tend to, stay in a location for quite a while. Like even in the Pegasus galaxy, I think they were there for a fairly long time. Like, so it's really hard to tell what their population originally was. And I can also see them as a race that would employ like a large level of sort of, I guess you'd call it automation in their ships. And obviously, they don't learn from their mistakes, because even when the group of ancients reoccupied Atlantis and the replicators ended up boarding there, they obviously weren't too concerned with their creations, and they were actually quite surprised that they would turn on them. Well, and that's also, a good question. Like, obviously, a lot of their infrastructure, I'm sure, was destroyed by the Wraith. But, how much stuff was hidden, and, There's got to be, manufacturing facilities for drones. There's got to be, ZPM factories somewhere. I sort of always had this envision, like for the ZPMs, I always had in my mind, like I always thought it was like an exotic matter thing that they had to do to build them, and I always, had this vision of these, hidden factories around stars collecting, highly energetic particles and converting them into, exotic matter to be used to build ZPMs. And because they were sort of hidden around stars and close to the the surface of stars, they basically went undiscovered. Well, it shows again how, flexible the ancients' technology is when, a single person can run a, a 3 kilometer battleship. And the other possibility with like the ZPMs too is obviously if the Wraith could use them to build super hives, and if the Wraith had access to some of these facilities, if they were losing this war, they may have gone scorch earth on a lot of these facilities and ensured that they were destroyed, because the risk was just too great to leave them existing. And sort of talking about forgotten technology that we've seen in Stargate, one of the ones that they've never really revisited again was the satellite weapons. When you can hook like a Nakwita generator up to those and charge it up to the point where it can slice a hive ship straight in half, those are quite versatile weapons. Well, when you look at the Aurora class, and you can see on the hull that it does have different weapon emplacements. Like it had those, I believe it has turrets that ran along the sides, and then you had that great big pod on the one side. So I almost wonder if that pod on the side was originally some sort of beam weapon. And using the chair to run the weapon systems. If you're not familiar with what systems are available to you on the ship, you may not know to activate that and use that. Well, if that was the comms array, yeah, they were definitely set up for long distance calling, that's for sure. And another sort of bit of technology that, I think that they sort of missed playing with was in the episode where McKay got that little shield emitter stuck to him, and basically until it ran out of power he was impervious to everything including food. So again, technology that that definitely should have been re-explored at some point. And again, one of the things I like about the Stargate universe is there's all these things that we can revisit and explore and discuss. And I definitely agree. Like, I do think the satellite weapon is probably one of the most powerful weapons that we've seen in Stargate. Like, just the way it carved through the hive. Like, the beam weapons, take out a hive after hitting it with 2 or 3 shots and, probably damaging critical systems inside. But the beam weapon just, carved straight through hives like it was a hot knife through butter. And it, again shows, I think, towards the end of the war, obviously, the ancients were doing a different approach to combat. Like the Asgard were, the beam weapons were all about, direct brute force, while the, against shielded targets, overwhelm the shields, and then, the hull of a ship is nothing compared to, the shields. And then the ancients are fighting a race that are based on armor, so you need a weapon that's designed in a whole different way to, carve versus overwhelm. And who knows, like, what one of those would have did. That could have been their last line of defense against a huge fleet of super hives. Yeah, so obviously if there was 3 to 4 satellites, they were definitely fighting against a large number of ships. Or even, a single superhive, maybe it would have took 3 or 4 satellites to take one down. Like, even if you carved straight through it, maybe they stayed, semi-functional, even though they were in, a broken up state. A lot of ship to destroy to make it non-functional. Well, I'm getting ready to do lunch pretty soon, so I'm just gonna, sort of toss the ship together here and let us all sort of take a look before I head out. Well, that's actually something I was hoping for, that, with the Asgard core, that they were actually going to do some sort of resurrection of the ancient race. And with that episode of Atlantis where you had that offshoot of the Asgard, I was really hoping that somehow that would play in, and maybe having the Asgard race stored would be their way to bring peace between the two parties, and bring them out of the shadows and change things. So here's where we're sort of at the end of this session. I think one more and the weapons pod is basically 100% done. And if everything works out, I think I'm going to try to do another modeling stream tomorrow and finish this one off. And again, if time allows while I'm doing it, if I'm done early enough, I might pop up the Mara and carry on and finish, or not finish it, but continue it. So, any final questions before I head out? Like, I think this is actually, quickly becoming one of my favorite designs that I've done so far. Oh, it was great fun sharing with everybody, and it's nice to see a lot of new faces here and a lot of people to discuss. And I've actually enjoyed our sort of Stargate related conversation. This has sort of been my big goal doing the live streams, is one, to talk about the modeling, and two, to sort of discuss things that we all enjoy, sci-fi, Stargate. As far as my next live stream, I'm probably going to do one tomorrow. I'm not sure time-wise, it just depends. I have to do some stuff with my wife tomorrow too, so it just depends on where I get to with those projects. And if you are part of the Discord channel that I set up, I can give you guys sort of a little notice ahead of time. If I feel I'm going to have time for streaming, I'll sort of post that I'll do it in about an hour or two, just so people have a general idea when I'm going to be doing that. And just, again, the render from last time of where the ship was at before we started. Well, I do have a link on my Facebook page, and I do have a link on my Devinit art page, but I can also do a new post for people so that it's a little more visible. Okay, I'll make sure I post an updated link there. Yeah, if you're under a different username, just, let me know, and then I, know who everybody is, and I can connect sort of names to faces a little bit better, or I guess names to names in this case. No, I'm not on Twitter at this point, no. I find that I sort of write too much stuff. And if you are part of the Discord channel, when I am streaming, there is a bot in there that will set up a reminder that I am streaming at that time, so it'll make a post to that effect. Okay, and again, thank you for everybody for coming out. It was definitely a pleasure talking to everybody, and it's a good way to sort of start to get know some of the people of the community that follows my art. And okay, till next time, thank you everybody, and have a good night.